Hello and welcome. I'd like to share another trip down memory lane for 2018. Two journals that I have worked on, and I thought we'd start here in my Joy of Art journal. If you're interested in seeing any of these individual works in progress, my playlist, you will find them in my playlist under Joy of Art. This was a journal that I found on sale. It certainly does not contain watercolor paper, but it does contain a nice quality paper. And so, last year, I started this journal with this, which is a combination of my watercolors and some ink on Yupo paper. This bits right here are ink on Yupo, and all of this surrounding work is watercolor paper. As you can see, it is it's quite deliciously vibrant, and it was great fun in the making. Let me get a little bit closer for you to see this. The pen embellishments were so much fun and really so important to making this piece stand out and kind of speak for itself. Next, I did a practice. I wanted, as I remember on this one, to practice reverse stenciling with watercolor. So I laid down my my watercolors using all of these as the background. I laid down a stencil, and I removed color using a wipe. And as you can see, it did a very, very nice job, but I felt that it was kind of still too blended into the background, so I used my white Uniball Signo pen on this one. Here, I decided to branch out a little bit and used watercolor for my background, and I used these colors in that background, and I used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of a collage, and I cut out through here and used this piece of collage as a window into the background. This started me seeing the possibilities of this combination and how I could work with it. Here again, last February, this was an experiment, but one that I'm quite tickled with the outcome. Since I was liking that so much, I decided on this one to use a stencil to cut through this page. I've been very lucky in this with this paper taking watercolor so well. So on this one, I cut out my stencil, and then on this page, I watercolored here and here, and then I added some of my Jo Sonja gold to these pencil doodles, to the leaves, and followed up on this idea over on this page, and I guess that's what started me on my path of using cut paper and 2 pages to enhance the goal of the piece. This one was quite different from anything I'd ever tried before, as you can see. But I have done it since, and I continue to do it. Background on these watercolors. I used my Schmincke watercolors for this pair. Here, in March, I wanted to do a practice using greens, again my Schmincke watercolors, and I have to be honest, I was not 100% tickled with the outcome on these leaves. I'm not sure whether it was Carol, whether it was the Schmincke watercolors, whatever. But I then decided that I would try using a favorite, putting some watercolor through a favorite stencil, and found out that that can lead to a rather nice, a rather pleasant outcome also. Again, I used on this one, I used my Peerless watercolors and some of the Gansai Tambi white gold on the page, which is rather difficult to see. I'll try to show it to you. And of course, all of a sudden, this page decided that it just absolutely called for a paper clip with a ribbon. This again was a practice using my Peerless watercolors. And Peerless watercolors, I'm sure some of you know, but some of you might not, are watercolors on paper, and they produce these beautiful, warm, heavy, rich colors. And originally, the Peerless watercolors were used to color tintypes over 100 and almost 150 years ago. So this page, again, let me see if I can let you see some of the, there, yes, some of the Gansai Tambi white gold. Here again, watercolors, and one focal piece of collage, and some pen and ink doodle painting. More practice, very a very less is more floral on here, and yet here again this paper stood up. And next is coming the piece, one of the pieces of this entire year. You know, everybody has their favorites. Maybe I have half a dozen this year that I really tickles me when I see them again, and here comes one of them. This spread consists of an old piece of paper from an old book that I ripped to get to use as a frame for this piece of collage. Why I picked it, I do not know. I used my see that. I'm believing that I used, yes, I'm believing that I used, I can feel it. I think this was acrylic that I used to try to match this background. And I layered some pieces of collage, one on the other. And then here I decided that I wanted to try using vellum. And so I attached this as a flip. I didn't know that I was on the road to, way back in May, I didn't realize I was on the road to junk journaling, but so this flip here again is acrylic painting, showing through and using over the edge, and I'm quite tickled with the outcome. And as I said, this is one of Carol's personal favorites for the year. I don't know, it just makes me happy. Here, more practice, back to, I know I was trying to blend colors and keep the subject dark, very oriental or touch and look to this, very simple. The background, these shades of watercolor, these for the, I don't know, flowers, balloons, whatever, flowers, I guess there are leaves here. A practice with a new brush, but here again, using my favorite stencil and removing removing watercolor through the stencil. And this was another trip down a new road for me. Here are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different types of collage on a background. On this background, I believe I use gouache because it's has more less transparency to it, and I wanted some color behind these strong colors, and I just love these neutral various and sundry shades of browns that it's always been a favorite of mine. A lot of people shy away, but I run toward. These pieces of paper came in a package, and I decided it was time that I use them with these with this gilt here. This was part of this paper. I added my own watercolor backgrounds here, and for the first time I used a piece of corrugated, and this is a bit of a piece of my first year's mixed media page. So, completely fun and very different, but so enjoyable, and I guess I'm there again seeing my new road. Back to a floral using my new Magello Mission Gold watercolors, and just placing the watercolor on the page and using the shapes that I found and my pen to produce these 3 flowers and leaves. In September, I wanted to try again with my Mission Golds. I wanted to try a something very neutral and laid back, unlike that one. So I did some. I used a stencil shape, popped some watercolor on it, but the background is the Mission Gold yellow gray indigo, some clear violet, a little bit of yellow orange, and I mixed these greens to practice my brush work with the new brush that I had started using before, and produce something that is quite different, and yet it was quite a pleasure to make, including attaching this, gluing on this flower. Here, another one, which still, as I look at it, as I go through this, it tickles me each time I see it. Still working with my new Mission Gold paints, and as you can see, I do love this watercolor yellow gray. It's a wonderful background color, and here I decided to cut circles and use 4 pieces of collage from my stash, and glued these papers together. And then these leaves are stamps that I'm still using now in my junk journaling because I love the shape, and that I laid them down next. And on top of that, I decided that I needed to have a little bit more of this green come out here. So, and some of this burnt sienna. And so I added the leaves, and as I said, these are 2 pages glued together, but very different for me, and very happy making. And I do believe that yes, that was that's the end for this year. I only got as far as November, but as I said, that's about the time when junk journaling started to enter my world. So I have to remember not to completely give up things like this. I must somehow find an extra few hours in every day to be able to do this and my new love also. So that's the Joy of Art journal. And then I also purchased one of Shannon Green's custom keepers, and I painted the and stenciled and generally played on this cover. And here, this is added into the back for traveling or for carrying supplies, but in this book I placed 3 signatures, and I used a nicer quality scrapbooking paper. And so in February I started with this one here again, a little flip of vellum, a picture, a piece of my collage, a piece of washi, some newsprint on the back, and this was the road I was putting myself on. I tried to use some of these colors that I found on the inside cover, and then I let the experiment begin. These pages that are here, some of them had backgrounds on them, and so for this one, this spread, I tried to play up these colors that I see here, and here are 2 pieces of stitchery on needlepoint paper rather than canvas, but I added these. Here, these are some of the Inkadinkado stamps. This piece is a stencil, and as you I followed out with it over here, bringing out the blacks from the cover of the book, and this kind of set me on in a style road for this Custom Keeper journal. And here again, if you want to see the process for these, my playlist would be Custom Keeper Journal. Here's a spread in which I wanted to use this. This was my focal, this piece of collage, and then I had another piece of collage, my paint work from a couple of years ago, and another piece of my favorite paper, and so forth. Well, you get the picture. I backgrounded this with some of my very favorite Target Shimmer Egg paint. I have a saying, go confidently in the direction of your dreams. Live the life you imagine. And some stenciling. It's just a happy combination of fun. Here again, another spread. Many, many pieces of collage bits. I just seem to want to cram in all the color and the things that made me happy onto this, and notice I'm starting to use some washi, and generally had fun telling this collage story. Just moments. And things that I liked and things that I wanted to have on this page, just telling this collage story. Here, just 2 pieces of collage and background paint, this time acrylic, and some gold stenciling, and a flower of mine added on top of the piece of collage. Colors quite different, and yet for me, and very enjoyable to use the turquoise with these shades of burnt orange, and they are really, really quite delightful. Here I let the collage story and the colors lead me. This one, for some reason, I had a real urge to do a gray background, and this one I covered up the background from, as I remember, it's the background from this piece of paper. I wanted it all of a sudden, I decided, oh, why don't I just let the background bit from here show through these shapes. I turned them into flowers, and over here I used some similar shapes, and I used my acrylic paints to make these leaves, and at the same time use these colors. And my go-to stencil with some silver acrylic. This Custom Keeper always seems to this year to push me a little bit to a something new, something to try, a what if, in other words. Now this background piece of paper on the back of this signature was a cleanup paper from my much-loved Thurber book, because it was just such a pretty piece of paper when you just looked at it as cleanup paper when it was in the Thurber book. So I got out a small piece of collage, and I decided to include this flower, bring out the colors, and I used some silver on here instead of my go-to gold, and some silver on the background again. And I decided, well, why don't I just bring this over to the front of this second signature. I took another sheet of paper out from my Thurber book, and I used these two are from magazines, and these two are pieces of my own original copies from my work from quite a few years ago, maybe 2014 or 15. And I continue the collage story over onto this side. Here, I was off to the races again. Again, this is June, and a new thought, a new collage story from this building. There was a front on this, and I painted it out and brought the stairs down a little bit. And here I did one of my go-to pots of flowers. This was an original pot, but this is a stencil. Here is a piece of collage that I laid next to this building, and here again is me dragging out some of the collage story onto this side, and here my favorite stencil with some of the colors from here, and some of this orange from this stencil. So, and my my go-to acrylic sky coloring. Here, little did I know what was starting to happen and starting to tickle me. I'd had this in my stash for quite a while, so I embellished it, and I embellished this tag, being ready to try Newsies in art. That was a bit of my own journaling on that one. And do not be too timid and squeamish about your actions. All life is an experiment. Little did I know that the grand experiment was coming in the form of junk journaling. Here are I decided to include two of my posies, and again back to the silvery gray, probably subconsciously from the coloring here, but I'm quite enjoying using that more and more of that shades of the gray in the background. These are original doodles, and these are, of course, stencils. And here is another in October. Here is another collage story, and all of this came out of the Magic folder. It's incredible the life that has of its own. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pieces of collage. And here again, this is the center of the second signature, and it had some free painting on it, so I used that to pick my colors for the collage story. And I added some doodling and some line work, and created this center in October. And here is another use of that same package of papers. This is a fine tissue that was part of my stash. Here are papers that are really different. This is flocked or almost velvet paper, and here again the 2 bits of gold, and here a golden paper, and here one that almost looks like leather, and this beautiful embossed paper. And I added some edging, but on this one I used a piece of my needlepoint canvas, and I added some gold to the center of these, and this was my focal for working around on these pieces. And it stuck a treat to this, and I think it found a happy home. And no, I skipped a few. Oh, I went into the third signature, and back, as you can see, to my my very favorite colors, and some interesting papers with the gold, something I don't often use, here and here. Some washi, some stickers that I acquired in July, and some of those Inka-Dinka-Doo stamps, which are probably part of the box of things I would save if the house was on fire. I do love them. Some glued down bit of fabric, just a flocked brown paper, and that was the reason for these small flowers, is this color. And so here we have the last bit in this journal for this year. And I do so hope that you have enjoyed this look at some of the pieces that I have done in these 2 journals. And I hope to be getting back to similar pieces in this coming year. I'm thinking about how I want to work and what I want to do this year. So let the grand adventure continue. I am so happy that you have joined me, and if you have enjoyed this page turn, please give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, share with a friend, and I would appreciate your subscribing to my channel. Please enjoy your upcoming holidays with your family, and I will be seeing you towards the middle of next week. Bye now.